All right, so good afternoon, everyone. It is wonderful to be together for a truly, truly sacred tradition at Temple Isaiah. There are likely some folks here who have never been to Congregants Hour before, who have no idea what it is that they're coming for, but you figured, it's just too long to drive home and come back for Yizkor, so you stuck around. You're in for something really wonderful. And then there are some folks who perhaps have been at almost every, or perhaps even every, Congregants Hour in the history of Temple Isaiah, going back to the early 1970s when Congregants Hour became our Yom Kippur afternoon tradition, brought to us by Rabbi Steve Fuchs, and really made a sacred part of our community, in this sense that we hear from three members of the community who are willing to share a piece of their own journey and their own lives, to give us a sense of perhaps some of the elements that connect into us as a spiritual community, but just a bit of their own lives. I have had the privilege of collaborating with and meeting and talking with Marion Miller over the course of all of my years at Temple Isaiah to imagine and to think about our Congregants Hour speakers and to formulate what this looks like. I would love to ask. Do you want to have those? Oh, okay. All right. Then I am going to tag Marion and say everyone has heard me more than enough over the course of this day. I'm going to go sit next to my wife.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's nice to see all of you here. And as we always open, we ask everyone who has spoken at Congregants Hour in the past to please stand. So if you've been a speaker, okay. Very good. Well, if you look around, you see that you have lots of different members who have spoken over the years, and we thank you for speaking. We understand that public speaking is very stressful for some people, and talking about yourself is sometimes uncomfortable for some people. So we're very glad that you volunteered and accepted the invitation to be a speaker over the years. And I know at least one person who has given his speech several times after he spoke at Temple Isaiah. By popular demand, different groups had him speak. That was lovely. We have three wonderful speakers here today, and I just wanted to give a brief summary. First is Deborah Adler, who is going to be speaking on making a new ending. Deborah was born and raised in New Haven, and she had her bat mitzvah and her confirmation in a congregation in New Haven. I wonder, as a bit of trivia, if anybody could guess who officiated at her bat mitzvah. Yes, well, I can't fool this crowd. Yes, Rabbi Paniff officiated at her bat mitzvah and at her confirmation. And I don't know who came here first, if he was stalking you or you were stalking him, but we came back together again, which was wonderful. Deborah has worked in the area of aging services for 25 years. If you read her bio, she has many wonderful experiences and has given back to the community in many, many ways. Most significant to us is that being a member of Temple Isaiah for 25 years, she served as the president of Kol Nashim for a number of years. She would bring her sister, a chef sister from New York, down a couple of times to do cooking demonstrations, and somebody earlier today reminded me of that. And so we're very pleased that she gave of her talents to Kol Nashim. She is the founder of a group called PARCHLI, Parchly, Parents of Children Living in Israel, and she also has been involved in lots of other activities. She has two children, both of them who were raised in Temple Isaiah, Danielle and Maxwell, and Max is here from Israel, so we're delighted to have him here, back home with us. And she also has a son-in-law, Bar Galin, and two grandchildren, Yuval and Ziv, and they all live in Jerusalem, in Tel Aviv. Our next speaker is David Glenn, who has been a congregant for many years. He was born in Roswell, New Mexico, and he was raised all over since his father was military, and then they wound up in the Washington area when his father was working for the federal government and his mother was a teacher. He's worked as a guidance counselor and coach for almost 40 years, mostly in Howard High School, so I imagine that some of you and some of your children knew him professionally from that work. His hobbies include sports, gardening, reading, and cooking. He and his family have been temple members for 15 years, but his wife, Deborah, way longer than that. She is also a product of Temple Isaiah Hebrew School and Confirmation class. I think she was in my son's class, in fact. And they have 3 sons together, Eli, Caleb, and Zay. You heard them doing the Torah blessing this morning, which was wonderful. So glad to have a homegrown family here. And then our newest member, who's been with us for a number of years, is Judith Golub. She's going to be speaking about learning about my Judaism. She was born and raised in the Bronx, and she taught school in the Bronx, in Vermont, and in an army base in Germany when she was traveling militarily with her husband. She and her husband moved to Saugerties, New York, where her husband opened his dental practice. She taught and ran the religious school at Temple Emmanuel in Kingston, New York, and served as the president of Temple Emmanuel and president of the Ulster County Jewish Federation. She's been a Temple member for 10 years, and she teaches in Kulanu, here with us. She and her husband, who passed away in 1993, raised 4 children together, Michael, Diana, Rachel, and Matthew, and she has 7 grandchildren. So that's the summary of our speakers for today. They'll be speaking in alphabetical order, and I know that you'll welcome them and enjoy them today. So we will start with my friend Deborah Adler.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Deborah S. Adler, and I am honored and delighted to be speaking with you today. The picture that I shared, is it echoing a little bit? Okay. The picture that I shared for this talk was taken by my friend Sandy Cummings when we were on a yoga retreat this past June in Pontresina, Switzerland. She texted it to me after we were back in the States and said, "Really love this picture of you, shows your joy." And I have to admit, when I look at that picture, it does show my joy. But if you think about what was going on at that time, June 14th through 21st to be exact, you might wonder how I was exuding any joy at all. You may remember that that was during the war between Israel and Iran, and if you don't know it, both of my children live in Tel Aviv. And as my dear friend Felicia Hewlett, who was with me on that trip, can attest, I was slightly worried, maybe freaking out a little bit. I have this app on my phone, and it alerts me to when there's a siren going off in central Tel Aviv, and it was going off continuously. It was on silent mode, so no one else could hear it, but I knew it was going off, and it was eating at me from the inside out. The plan had been for me to travel directly from Zurich to Tel Aviv on Sunday, June 22nd. My daughter Dani was almost 40 weeks pregnant with her second child, and I really wanted to be there to support her. But the universe had other plans. My flight was canceled, and when I asked the kids if they thought that I should hang out in Zurich for a few days and see what happened, they said, "Mom, we don't think anything is going to change for several weeks. You should go home and come back another time." So I bought my return ticket home. I was disappointed, I was upset, and I was on a yoga retreat in the Swiss Alps. We were doing yoga every morning, and we were hiking and exploring every afternoon. It's beautiful there. Have you been? There are gorgeous lakes and mountains, rivers and waterfalls, and there were interesting people to meet. So I tried to stay present, I tried to stay in the moment, I tried to let go of things I couldn't control. Now, I haven't always been this way. When people find out that my children have made Aliyah, Dani made Aliyah in 2019 and Max in 2022, Max is here today, their first words are Mazel Tov, And yes, Mazel Tov is in order because I'm very proud of my children. They are walking the talk. They are living their true convictions. At the same time, their choices don't only affect them, they affect me as well. My children live almost 6,000 miles away and in a different time zone, and in not such a friendly neighborhood. So I'm hoping that I can share a little bit of the process that I've been going through, and it can shed some light on my journey. If you don't know me, you may not know that I've been practicing yoga for over 25 years, and there's two concepts in yoga that I think are relevant here, abhyasa and vairagya. Abhyasa means consistent effort or practice. You can think of it as practicing the piano. Vairagya is acceptance. You can't control the outcome, so you shouldn't be attached to the results. So you might practice the piano and you just do your best, and you may not play perfectly, but you just do your best. So let me illustrate those concepts in a story. It was the fall of 2022, and I was in Beta Jenkins' class at the Yoga Center of Columbia. Her theme for the day was non-attachment to the results. In other words, vairagya. I was amazed at how well Beta seemed to be doing. You see, right before class, she had her son Cyrus, who was 22 and had attended UMBC and had always lived at home, had just left for medical school in Chicago. So I was just watching in awe. It was amazing how well Beta seemed to be doing. I myself was also struggling with something similar. As I mentioned, Max made Aliyah in 2022, and he was just about to make Aliyah. So I went up to Beta after class, and I said, Beta, it seems like you're really doing okay with Cyrus being in Chicago. And she said, no, I'm not doing okay, but I'm trying to reframe the situation. She said, instead of looking at this as a deficit, I'm regarding Cyrus going to Chicago as an expansion of my world. She said, because he is in Chicago, my world has gotten bigger. Wow, that was mind-altering to me. Honestly, I had been in a state of denial before that. I had this false hope that Max would change his mind and stay in DC, and Danny and her family would decide to come back to the area, and we'd all live close together, and everyone would be happy. It was a total fantasy. I realized at that moment that I had to let go. I couldn't make Max stay or Danny come back just because I wanted them here or I was worried about them. They had to do what they needed to do, and I needed to let go. Since then, I've tried to regard my children's living in Israel as an opportunity, not a loss. And honestly, my children have helped me grow and expanded my world, whether I was ready for it or not. And I visit often. I visit about twice a year now, and my family circle has widened. Not only do I have my children, I have my two grandsons, and I have my son-in-law, Bar, who some of you met when he guided the Temple Isaiah tour of Israel in March of 2023. I also have Bar's parents, and I have Bar's siblings and their spouses and the children, and I have my cousins, and I even have a few new friends, including Rotem, who's here today with Max. And in case you're worried that I didn't get to meet my new grandson, rest assured, I did get to go to Israel in August, and I got to meet my new grandson, Zeev, and I got to hold him, and I got to hang out with his big brother, Yuval, and I spent some real quality time with my family and friends. Letting go of the result has opened me up to countless blessings. There have been so many, and because I'm constrained to 10 to 15 minutes, I'll only share a couple. Number one, partially. I started partially a group for parents with children living in Israel. All the parents live in the Baltimore, Washington area in 2022. After Yuval was born in May of 2022, I was in Israel for a month helping out Danny and Bar, and it was really bittersweet. I must have been walking around with a punim on my face because Danny asked me, "Mom, what's wrong?" And I said, "I have this beautiful new grandson and he's so far away." And she said, "Mom, you need to find other people who are in a similar situation as you." So I knew she was right, and I started looking for my people. I looked on Facebook for groups, and I advertised in newsletters anywhere I thought people might be. And in August of 2022, we held our first Zoom meeting, and we've been Zooming every 4 to 6 weeks since then. I now have a list of 29 dedicated parents, and just like their children who are in Israel for all different reasons, we are a very diverse group of all different Jewish affiliations and perspectives. Our purpose is not to debate the politics of the day. We're there to provide support and community for each other. We have a WhatsApp group where we wish each other Shana Tova and Shabbat Shalom, and we tell each other if we have room in our suitcase. It never really happens. And we also share good airline deals when we find them. And we've met 4 times in person. That is the absolute best. To be amongst other people who know how it feels when the sirens are going off is truly incredible. Partially parents constantly express their gratitude to me for starting this group, and I tell them, honestly, I did it out of my own selfish needs, not for you. But it turns out that doing something for myself also benefited others. Number 2, becoming a registered yoga teacher. I became a registered yoga teacher in November of 2024. And although I had done a lot of other trainings over the years, I'd done yoga immersion, Ayurveda immersion, mindfulness-based stress reduction, I never had the courage to do teacher training. I knew it was a rigorous endeavor. It's 11 months, 200 hours, there's a lot of studying, a lot of reading, there's an apprenticeship, there's a I was most intimidated by the fact that I hold my teachers in the highest regard, and I just couldn't imagine myself becoming a member of their club. But I did it, and in April, I started teaching once a week, and in the past year, I've held 3 donation-based classes, 2 right here at Temple Isaiah. So if you have participated or contributed, I thank you. My next goal is to start a website called Yoga for Good Cause, where I and other yoga teachers raise money for different charitable causes through yoga. As I told my fellow teachers, I can only do so much on my own, but imagine what we can do together. And the list goes on and on. I don't know where it's going or where it ends, but I do know that world is wide open and expansive. I try to live in the present, and as my photo shows, I try to experience the joy of every single moment. The writer Maria Robinson said, "Nobody can go back and start a new beginning, but anyone can start today and make a new ending." For each of you, I wish you countless blessings. I wish you the ability to let go of things you can't control. I wish you to find the joy in life, and I wish you the ability to make a new ending. Thank you.
Okay, try and follow that. Hi, my name is David Glenn. Let me get my glasses on here. Wow. This crowd is much more than I was expecting. But to give you a little background of myself, yes, I was born in Roswell, New Mexico. I am not an alien baby, so don't worry about any of that stuff. I would like Rabbi Axler to tell me how many Jewish people are in Roswell, New Mexico, or the state, as something for myself. I grew up Catholic, Roman Catholic. My dad was a deacon in the Catholic Church for a number of years before he passed away. I was an altar boy myself. I worked in my local parish, and I was very much into Catholicism. And I'd always been around religion. I grew up with my mom, went to a private elementary school, went to a Catholic high school, went to Loyola for, as a Jewish Jesuit school. And even when I was in college, one of my main hangouts was at the campus ministries at Loyola, hanging out with the brothers and some of the priests. And not because they had great happy hours or anything like that, because I was really enjoying being there. And just the community. I really was enjoying the community of being Catholic with other Catholics. When I went to my high school guidance counselor, I said, I want to go to college someplace. And he said, where do you want to go? And the first words out of my mouth were someplace where it's Catholic. Okay? And so he gave me one choice. He said Loyola or Notre Dame. So couldn't afford Notre Dame, Loyola was a choice. And it worked out. It was great for me. I had some great friends, some lifelong friends that I still stay in touch with. But that was my mindset going in. And at that very time, I was very, very naive when it came to anything Jewish, Judaism at all. I knew a few Jewish people maybe, but a lot of that never even came up in the conversation. And I'm not sure if it was the time. I mean, I am 63, so back then, I did not know. It just wasn't part of the conversation that we had at home with my parents at all. And I never even associated, to be honest with you, Passover with being something Jewish. I thought it was something Catholic. Because we would do a Passover service at the church, but it never was associated with Judaism at all. So, needless to say, when my mom started talking about, Passover and going over to my Deborah's parents' house, she loved it. She really wanted to go to see an authentic one. I'm like, what do you mean authentic one? I thought we already had an authentic one. So I went to Loyola, graduated in 84 from undergrad and 86 in grad school. But while I was there, one of my first jobs I had being on campus, because I stayed at college for the summer, was working at Bonneview Country Club. Okay. I did not know it was a predominantly Jewish country club. So I got there and I was working on one of the sections of the golf course where in between the ninth and the 10th hole, there was a snack bar. And I worked there and I was helping out and giving them food and stuff and meeting some of the people. Heard a lot of things like Melbahan and some other stuff like that. And I was talking to the guys, I'm like, I don't understand what's going on here. And they started explaining to me, yes, this is predominantly a Jewish country club. And most of the guys that were working there, some were Jewish, some weren't, but the ones that I really connected with were the Jewish guys. They started talking to me about different things. It gave me a negative feeling about Jewish people because of the way they were treating each other, talking about the other folks, and I didn't really like that. And it gave me a really negative connotation of being Jewish. And I didn't like that. So I did that job and left after the summer. The very next summer, of all things, the next job I had was at Camp Milldale. Now, whole different scenario. I was working in the sports camp, and pretty much everyone who worked there was Jewish. And the counselors were, and they brought me in and treated me so well and made me a part of the community. They would have their prayers at the very beginning before everyone spread out to do their different spots. And it was kind of neat because I was like, I didn't know what they were saying because everything was in Hebrew. And so they sat there to pull me to the side. They explained to me different things. One of the most amazing things I thought was I saw these wires going between houses. And I'm like, what's all this for? And they explained to me about, I guess on Fridays or Friday evenings after a certain time, they have to walk along the lines to go to the houses. And just the history of what they were talking to me about was amazing to me. And I learned a lot from them. To this day, some of them are still my very good friends. But I learned a lot about Jewish culture and life to people. And it made me feel connected in a sense. But I didn't realize, one Jewish thing to another Jewish thing, but it was something that was fulfilling for me. I really enjoyed that. So after college, I went and worked at Mount St. Joe for 3 years before I transferred over to Howard High School. And when I was at Howard High School, again, I was a single guy, living in Baltimore, we had Jewish holidays. Okay, didn't have those when I was working at Mount St. Joe's, so we missed school. So on Jewish holidays, I always went into school to work. I coached football, I coached track, but during the football season, I always wanted to get some of the work done because being a guidance counselor, I had recommendations to do and other stuff. So, but I would always go into school, and on those holidays, I would always stand there and watch the parking lot fill up at Howard High School. And I'm thinking, all these people are coming, and this is going on, and they're there from 9 until 12. I'm thinking, what is going on between 9 and 12? And I could never sneak down there because I wasn't dressed appropriately. But I'd see students there, they'd see me stand at the door. I'm like, what's Mr. Glenn doing here at school on a Jewish holiday? But I'd wave to them or I'd talk to them, and it made me want to be a part of that because the way that everyone was very happy going in, very happy going out, and it was, this must be a really fun time. A long fun time, but it was a fun time. I was always curious about that. So in 2001, Deborah and I started dating, and I started going to services with her when you were at the meeting house. I would walk in with her. I got some looks, of course, But then I also saw people, it's Mr. Glenn. I didn't know Mr. Glenn was Jewish. And I ended up knowing a lot of people that were going to the services there, almost to the point where people were saying hi to me before they were saying hi to Deborah or her parents. And I think I actually probably knew more people than they did. So as we got closer to our dating situation, and we got a little more serious, and we came to a crossroads at one point in our relationship. It was after an evening out, and we just started talking about the future plans and things, and the question came out, well, if we have kids, I'm like, oh, if we have kids, okay. Are we going to raise them Jewish or Catholic? Because my family is very strong Catholic, she's very strong Jewish. And to be honest with you, I didn't even think twice. I just said, we'll raise the kids Jewish. That's fine with me. As long as there's a religious background and there's some connection to Judaism and God, that's what I want to do. And so from there we moved forward, which, thank God, it worked out for us. Thank you. So fast forward then to now that I'm into it. I'm part of the community as much as I can without. I felt like a little bit of an outsider sometimes coming into services because people would look at me like, why is he here? And I get that sometimes when I go to certain places, that's, as an African American going to a place where there's not a lot of other African Americans, sometimes you get that look. And my parents have brought us up. My dad was retired military, so a lot of the places that we went to when we traveled, there weren't a lot of other African Americans there. So as a family, we got used to just maintaining who we are, and when I first came into Temple Isaiah, I want to say I got that feeling a couple times. I got the looks. But over the years, that has changed. And I think it really started, fast forward, I guess, to the birth of Eli. I knew that's when I was really connected to Judaism. Even though I had my other connections here and there that were kind of outward, that was my first real connection, and it was his bris. It was a ceremony that was very meaningful for me in that, just first of all, the people that came to our house for the bris, the ceremony itself, sitting and holding Eli and going through this prayer service, it was just a nice connection for me to seeing him become part of the Jewish community. And it really had a big impact on me, and then of course with the other two as well, it just really solidified that for me. So then as Eli got to preschool and we got to meet other people, I really became connected with TI. The people here have been phenomenal as far as welcoming myself, welcoming our kids. We've met a lot of great people here. I've got some like people I would consider lifelong friends here at Temple Isaiah. I see like there's Pottermans are out here who people that we've met with, Sarah Khan. I see some other just folks that my kids love hanging out with, they love being with, and they've never judged us, pulled us in as a family, and that's where I feel like I'm really, really connected here to Temple Isaiah. Like I said, I grew up Catholic, and little did I know that, as my mom told me once we started, Dare and I started dating, that Catholicism, the roots are in Judaism. And so whenever my mom would want to come to one of the services or do Passover at Dare's parents' house, she would always say, I just love watching you do this. I love watching how the Judaism really impacted Catholicism. She just wanted to be, her big thing was having to come to an authentic Seder, which I thought we already had one, but it's another story to tell. So I can literally say my Jewish connection started when I was born. I was a Catholic. Catholicism is born out of Judaism. It has strengthened from all the different services I've been to, Shabbat services, to a preschool, bar mitzvahs, confirmations. Rabbi Adler, who has been absolutely phenomenal in bringing me in, educating me. There's things during bar mitzvahs when he's talking about the Torah, I'm learning more and more every day with him. Being on the board with him I learn something new from him every day, every service. And then we also have Rabbi Plotkin and now Rabbi Weiss, who has also been, it's a different connection with her being younger than I am and learning more from her with my kids. Being asked to serve on the board, which was an absolute shock that I was considered for this. I still blame my wife for that. Even though she says she has nothing to do with it. But I appreciate that and the fact that I was being accepted into the community to help serve everyone here because you've given me so much. And I look at my boys to see how they've grown up and they make me really proud. Oh my God, I'm going to start crying. The people in this community, I can honestly say, are my friends. They make me feel comfortable and welcome. And I can say that I'm Jew-ish, okay? And I'm going to end with, hold on, I wrote it down. Toda Rabbah. Thank you.
Excuse me if I have to say. Well, those are both hard acts to follow. Okay, my name is Judith Barbara Golub. I was born in the Bronx, 6 blocks from Yankee Stadium. I am a Yankee through and through. Pardon any O's fans. I was born on September 30th, 1945, so 2 days ago I just celebrated my 80th birthday. And I am celebrating it with you too. Both of my parents were Jewish, though they did not practice their Judaism or attend synagogue. My father was raised in a kosher family. My mother wasn't, and since she ran the kitchen, we weren't either. My brother Stuart had a bar mitzvah. I thought that was, when he was studying for it, neat thing to do. I'd love to do it. But in those days, in our synagogues, girls didn't have anything. So I said, well, then why go to religious school if I can't have a bar mitzvah? So I didn't really go to school. But I did have a bar mitzvah as an adult at my temple much later on. My mother was one of 9 siblings, and so was my father. Our family was loud and large. I had 25 first cousins, not including their husbands and wives. We did celebrate Passover, but no other holy days. The area I lived in was predominantly Jewish. So most of the children that I grew up with were also Jewish. I lived in an apartment building that was 6 stories high and 6 apartments in each building, and all but one of the people in the building were Jewish. Of course, when came Christmas time, all the kids in the building went to that apartment. We wanted to see what a Christmas tree looked like up close and personal. We enjoyed the Jewish holidays, mostly because New York City gave us off school, so it was great. But I didn't know anything about them. My parents never taught me. I just assumed I was Jewish and that was all there was. I met my late husband, Stuart Golub, and by the way, yes, his name is the same as my brother's, which is interesting, when we both worked at a day camp in Irvington-on-the-Hudson when we were both 16. His family were Jewish, but they didn't celebrate the holidays either. Although, boy, was his grandmother a good cook. We dated through college. We both went to the City University of New York in Harlem. And then he went to dental school. I taught school in the Bronx for 3 years while he was in we married after the end of his first year. So for his next 3 years, I had to earn some money, so I was teaching. And I loved teaching. We got married on June 10th, 1967 at a Jewish community center. When he finished dental school, we moved to Burlington, Vermont, where he had an internship, and I continued teaching. He was drafted into the Army during Vietnam in the middle of that internship. And then, by the way, we got an oops letter from the Army saying, oh, we don't need you now. But we had stopped looking for a practice. We had canceled the lease on our apartment. I had already quit my job. So we ended up in the Army in Bamberg, Germany. And there I taught remedial math to soldiers who wanted to get their GEDs, because my degree at City College was in both education and mathematics. We adopted our first son, Michael, there, and gave birth to our first daughter, Diana. Still not much Jewish holidays were celebrated. Fast forward to our return to the States, where we settled in Saugerties, New York, about 100 miles north of New York City, right on the Hudson River. It was a beautiful area. Hudson River on one side, Catskill Mountains on the other side. And we had one more daughter, Rachel, who's sitting right there, and another son, Matthew. And I was working part-time in his dental office. We both realized that our children were not getting any Jewish education, so we joined a Reformed congregation in Kingston, New York, and sent them to religious school there. I realized, oops, they're going to know more about this stuff than I did. And being a teacher, I didn't like that. So I wanted to learn about Judaism so I could keep up with them. I started taking all the adult classes the temple offered. And I met with the rabbi, and he was wonderful. And we began attending services every Shabbat and on all the Jewish holidays. I became very friendly with the director of the religious school, whose name was Leonard Zimmett. He found out that I had teaching experience and asked me to teach in the school. I said, how can I teach in the school? I don't know very much. He said, how hard is it going to be to keep 1 week ahead of third graders? So I did. And I taught my first class and absolutely loved it. It was a wonderful third grade class. By the way, one of the students in that third grade class is now the cantorial soloist at my old temple. It was wonderful. A few years passed, and I also started teaching 8th grade, which was Jewish American history. So I loved what was being talked about. And the rabbi, Jonathan Eichhorn, and I co-taught confirmation class. Sadly, my husband passed away in August of 1993. He was only 48. I lost my best friend and my employer. I sold his practice 1 year later, started teaching remedial mathematics at a local community college. And the director of the religious school retired, and I was also asked to run the religious school. I agreed and did that for 20 years. I kept teaching at the college for the same 20 years. During the summers, I went to something called the Coalition for the Advancement of Jewish Education, CAGE, as it's commonly known. And the meetings were always in college campuses, and we learned a tremendous lot from all the other religious school teachers. We learned games and activities and fun things, and I took them all home with me and taught my teachers, and they used them. I also got to meet Debbie Friedman. She was singing, always had a chorus, so I, of course, joined her chorus and got to meet her, and she was an amazing woman. For those of you who don't necessarily know her, she wrote some of the most beautiful Jewish music. I tried to create games. By the way, it was so wonderful, Judaism filled my heart with joy. I discovered that I had talent for making Jewish education fun and challenging for children. I created games that I shared with all the teachers. We even had, now our school was certainly not as big as this. We had about 130 children in it at that time. And we created something called the Wandering It Through Passover program. And all the teachers had a position. Some were doing matzah, some were doing water relay races, the hand washing. We had it all over the temple. Art projects, music sessions, and much more. I loved the Sundays with the children and the teachers. Then grandchildren came into my life. And I moved to Maryland, so I decided to be closer to them. I didn't want them having a long-distance bubby, and 2 of my grandchildren are right here, smiling big. And my other grandchildren are in Virginia, and they were then North Carolina, and now 2 of them are in Florida. And I'll talk a little bit about that in a minute. But I needed a temple to belong to. I was lucky enough to find Temple Isaiah, where one of my teachers from Temple Emmanuel, Nora Goldstein, belonged to, and I happily joined there. By the way, Temple Emmanuel, a couple of years ago, celebrated its 170th year. It's one of the oldest congregations outside of New York City. And it was started by fishermen and peddlers. I used to ask my kids in the religious school, well, what branch of Judaism do you think that temple was? And they'd go, oh, Reform. I go, nope. They said, conservative? I go, no. They said, Orthodox? I go, no. Well, what was it? I said, it was Jewish. That was it. When Rabbi Plotkin was hired to run the school, I asked if he needed teachers, and happily for me, he said yes. And I have been teaching Kulanu since then. I still love sharing our wonderful stories and holidays and history with the children here. It fills my heart with joy. All this wouldn't be possible if my late husband and I had not made the decision to join my first temple congregation, Emmanuel, in Kingston, New York. Now, I have to tell you one cute story. My oldest son is divorced from his first wife, and the children live with their mother and their stepfather, who are both Christian, so they're being raised Christian, and I understand that, down in Florida. 2 years ago, I got a phone call from Sarah, the mother, saying, I want your grandchildren to learn about Judaism in Israel. Would you teach them on Zoom once a week? So for a whole year, I had the pleasure of teaching them about Judaism and Israel, and that was amazing to me. A couple of months ago, the older one, Alexis, sent me a picture. She decided to buy herself a Mogen David to wear around her neck. She's still Christian, but she wants her Judaism to be shown that she is part of the Jewish people. So I loved that. What did I learn from this Jewish knowledge that I found? I learned that we are a beautiful, resilient, loving, and caring religion. We have struggled harshly, but have grown each time. I am proud to say that I am Jewish, and I love teaching it to anyone who will sit down and learn. Thank you. Okay, I will stay right here.
Unmute. Yep, there we go. If you stay there, and if the three of you, first off, thank you each for sharing a piece of your own lives with everyone. And there's no question that every time we've had Congregants Hour, it spurs interesting additional follow-up questions. So if you have a follow-up question for one or all three or two of our speakers that you'd like to ask, we want to spend just a couple of minutes to be able to have some back and forth before we wrap the Congregants Hour for 5786 and then retool ourselves, getting ourselves ready for the afternoon service. So is there anyone with a question that they'd like to follow up with? I'm going to toss this all the way over to Larry Gordon.
First of all, I'd like to commend everyone on an excellent presentation. All were interesting, informative, and as always, it's a pleasure to be here. I have a comment and a question that's actually more directed towards Dave. First, a comment. At one time, the bylaws of Temple Isaiah prohibited non-Jews from serving on the board. Luckily, there were some forward-thinking people who changed the bylaws to allow that, and your presentation and board service are testament to the wisdom of that decision. My question is, and it's just a rhetorical question, when I saw you and your beautiful family on the Bema today, I was thinking to myself, where did those boys get their height? No need to answer that.
Dara's dead.
Others with a question or a follow-up that they'd like to ask? Karen.
Hi. I wanted to say, oh my gosh, everything was just so amazing. All y'all were doing such a great job. But I wanted to ask David a question. As someone who converted from Catholicism to Judaism, I also came from a large family. There's a lot of animosity with my cousins and aunts and a lot of things that have been directed at me that have been quite hurtful. Did you experience any of that?
Let me correct. I never converted to Judaism. So, no, be honest with you, first of all, they loved Dara. So, my family loved Dara more than they loved me. So, my parents were very accepting with it. As a matter of fact, we had to go through what they call pre-Cana before we got married. And we had to meet with the priest from my parish. And he was very accepting of Dara, and even to the point where technically I'm supposed to have signed an agreement saying that we're going to raise the children Catholic. But he also told us that as we're walking out and going to the car, if we decided to change our minds, we could do that. So we did. But no, it's been very accepting. As a matter of fact, all of my friends love Dara. It's never been an issue for us.
Others with a question or a comment or a response back to our speakers? All right. Then if that's the case, I am going to just say a tremendous word of thanks to all three of you, because everyone in here, particularly those who themselves were Congregants Hour speakers, know full well that it is no simple thing to get up in front of your community and to share a piece of yourself, and to do that in a way that is beautiful and vulnerable and helpful and instructive, and all of the things in which you have blessed us with. It is really, truly a sacred part of Yom Kippur for me, not only just the option to be able to sit for a few minutes and just listen instead of talk, but to have the individuals who've shared of their lives. So I thank all three of you from the bottom of my heart, and on behalf of the congregation, on behalf of Marion and myself, coordinating for Congregants Hour. And I also take a look around this room right now. And again, some people were here at Congregants Hour for the very first time ever. Every once in a while, somebody comes to us and says, you know, I have something I would like to be able to share at Congregants Hour. You see who Marion is, you see who I am. We're around, you can find us, we're findable. And you never know, we might tap on your shoulder in the next year or somewhere in like that. So thank you all very much for sharing what you've shared, for bringing your stories, and for making this day that much holier because of it. Thank you all so much. And we're going to start our afternoon service in the not too distant future. Yeah.
Diehard Red Sox fan.
And if you want to greet any of our Congregants Hour speakers, you can come.